In 1947, a Pullman porter in Chicago named Cleophus earned $1,840 a year. By the time he retired in 1971, he owned 3 houses on the South Side, had put 2 children through Howard University, and held $14,000 in a savings account at Binga State Bank's Successor on 47th Street. He never received a raise larger than $1 a week. He never inherited a cent. What he had was a green cloth-bound ledger his mother gave him in 1925, and a set of money rules so disciplined that his grandchildren still own every property he ever bought. He was not exceptional. Across America, in Durham and Tulsa and Oakland, black families were building wealth the country had spent 2 centuries trying to deny them. They did it without mainstream banks, without FHA loans, without inheritance. They built it with skills, habits so effective they survived slavery, Reconstruction, redlining, and the Great Depression. Almost everyone has been forgotten. We stopped teaching these skills the moment integration made them feel old-fashioned. We were wrong. Number 23 on this list built more black wealth before 1960 than any government program in American history. Number 14 was so common in black neighborhoods that white sociologists wrote papers about it without understanding what they were seeing. And number 1, the quietest skill on this list, turned wages of $4 a week into homes, businesses, and college tuitions for 3 generations. These 30 skills were not about scarcity, they were about strategy under siege. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 30 lost money skills African American families passed down that built generational wealth before 1980. Number 30, the successor. 10 women each contributed $5 a week. Every 10th week, 1 woman walked away with the entire $500. No interest, no paperwork, no bank. A domestic worker in Harlem in 1953 named Beulah used her susu turn to buy a Singer sewing machine for $89. That machine paid her rent for 11 years and her brownstone down payment in 1964. The technique was West African, carried across the Atlantic in memory, kept alive in black communities for 3 centuries. By 1955, sociologists at Fisk estimated 1 in 4 black women in northern cities belonged to one. The susu was a bank that could not redline you. Number 29, the land deed in the mattress. A sharecropper's son in 1938 Mississippi kept his 40-acre deed inside a flour sack inside the mattress for 40 years. The courthouse was not safe. White clerks routinely lost the records of black landowners. Tax notices went unmailed. Sales were recorded that had never happened. That same deed became the down payment on his daughter's Detroit house in 1962. Black land ownership in America peaked at 16 million acres in 1910. By 1997, it had dropped to less than 2 million. The families who kept theirs knew exactly where the deed was. The mattress was not paranoia. It was institutional memory. Number 28, the beauty shop lending circle. A beautician in Baltimore in 1956 named Miss Pearl kept a coffee can on her shelf. Every Friday, customers dropped $1 in. When someone needed $30, Miss Pearl pulled it from the can. No interest. The collateral was the next appointment. Miss Pearl lent on character, not paperwork. Her default rate across 19 years was under 2%. The Negro Business League in 1949 estimated more informal credit moved through black salons monthly than through black-owned savings institutions. The beauty shop was a community bank. The shampoo bowl was the teller window. Number 27, buying property in cash. A janitor in Cleveland in 1959 named Roosevelt saved $12 a week for 11 years and bought a duplex for $4,200 in cash. No mortgage, no bank approval, no discriminatory appraisal. Between 1934 and 1968, federal housing policy explicitly excluded black families from mortgage lending. A black man walking into a bank for a home loan was almost guaranteed denial. A black man walking into closing with cash could not be refused. Roosevelt's duplex stayed in his family for 60 years. The deed was the receipt. The receipt was the freedom. Number 26, the Burial Society. A penny a week. That was the dues at Mount Olive Baptist's Burial Society in Birmingham in 1934. When a member died, the society covered the funeral, the plot, and the headstone. No white insurance company would write a policy on a black sharecropper. The churches stepped in. Every black Baptist, Methodist, and AME congregation in the South ran one. North Carolina Mutual, founded in 1898, began as an expansion of exactly this idea, the penny-a-week dues that built a black insurance industry. A burial society was not morbid. It was infrastructure. Number 25, reading the Pittsburgh Courier. A subscription cost $5 a year. The paper carried black-owned bank listings, black real estate brokers, and editorials urging black readers to circulate their dollars within black-owned enterprises. A Pullman porter in 1952 who read the Courier on every run knew which black bank to deposit in when he reached Chicago, which black hotel to stay in when he reached Pittsburgh, which black doctor to recommend in St. Louis. The black press in 1950 reached 4 million readers weekly, treating black economic life as a serious subject when no one else would. The newspaper was the financial advisor. Number 24, the cash envelope behind the picture frame. A widow in 1948 Atlanta named Hattie kept $340 in emergency money behind a framed photograph of her late husband. She had heard family stories of the Freedmen's Savings Bank collapse of 1874, and she had lived through the bank runs of 1933. When the doctor delivered her grandson at home in 1951, she paid him from behind the frame. No medical debt, no bill in the mail. For black families in the post-war South, the home cash reserve was prudent. Banks were segregated, hostile, and historically unreliable. The frame was the safe. The safe was the answer banks had repeatedly failed to provide. Number 23, banking at black-owned banks. Mechanics and farmers in Durham. Citizens Trust in Atlanta. Industrial Bank in Washington. Carver Federal in Harlem. A black family in 1955 banked where they were respected. Maggie Lena Walker founded St. Luke Penny Savings in Richmond in 1903, becoming the first woman of any race to charter a bank in the U.S. By 1924, her bank held nearly $5 million in deposits and had financed over 600 black-owned homes. $1 in a black-owned bank circulated through the black community an average of 9 times before leaving. Every deposit was an act of community defense. Number 22, the garden that replaced the grocery store. A retired railroad worker in Memphis in 1962 grew collards, tomatoes, okra, and sweet potatoes on a quarter-acre lot. Seeds cost $4 in March. The harvest fed his family of 6 for 8 months. His wife canned what they could not eat fresh. The Department of Agriculture in 1965 documented that black families in segregated cities paid 12% more for identical groceries than white families. The garden was not nostalgia. It was a hedge against a market designed against him. He was not gardening. He was opting out. Number 21, the Sunday dinner economy. Every Sunday after church, a family in 1957 Charleston cooked enough food for 15. Cousins came, neighbors came, children of working mothers came. A pot of red rice cost 40 cents and fed 12. The Sunday dinner was a meal and a redistribution system. Anyone short that week ate. Anyone with extra brought it. Federal welfare in 1957 was inaccessible to most black households due to discriminatory administration. The Sunday table did the work the government refused to do. No one called it welfare. They called it family. Number 20, the two-job standard. A man in 1953 Newark worked at Singer's sewing machine by day, and he drove for Brown Bomber Cab on weekends. His wife taught school by day, and she did hair at night. 4 income streams, 1 household. A black factory worker in 1953 could be fired for any reason. A family with 1 income was a family one day from disaster. A family with 4 was a family that could survive losing anyone. Black home ownership rose from 24% in 1940 to 38% by 1970, despite federal policy working against it. He was not working too hard. He was working at the level the situation demanded. Number 19, the children's earnings pool. A boy of 9 in 1944 Detroit shined shoes for 15 cents a pair. His sister cleaned a Grosse Pointe house for $2. Their mother took every penny, deposited it at Industrial Savings Bank, and handed each child a passbook on their 18th birthday. His passbook held $812. It paid his first year at Wayne State. Hers held $1,140. It paid for nursing school. The labor of black children, properly captured, was the only inheritance many families could create. The work was not exploitation. The deposit was inheritance. Number 18, the Church Building Fund. A congregation of 200 in rural Alabama in 1951 saved for 14 years to build a new sanctuary. Every member tithed 10%. The treasurer tracked every dollar in a ledger. The building cost $11,000 when finished in 1965. The church owned itself. The mortgage did not exist. The bank had no leverage. In a county where the sheriff harassed civil rights organizers, the debt-free church was the only space the community fully controlled. Voter registration drives met there. A debt-free building was a debt-free institution. Number 17, the Hand-Me-Down Wardrobe Network. A child's wool coat in Harlem in 1950 might be worn by 6 different children over a decade. It moved between cousins, neighbors, and church families in an unspoken rotation. A new coat at Macy's cost $10. A week's wages for a domestic was $22. The network was the difference between a child walking to school warm or cold. Every mother sent and received. The black church in Harlem essentially ran a parallel garment exchange that clothed thousands of children every winter at almost no cost. The network was not charity. It was logistics. Number 16, the black-owned insurance policy. North Carolina Mutual, Atlanta Life, Supreme Liberty Life, Golden State Mutual. A black family in 1955 bought insurance from a company that believed they were worth insuring. A school teacher in 1955 in Raleigh paid $4 a month for a $2,000 policy from North Carolina Mutual. When her husband died in 1962, it paid in 2 weeks. A white-owned company would have charged $7 a month, taken 3 months to process, and might have contested the claim on a technicality. These companies built 6-story office buildings on premiums paid $1 at a time. The premium was an investment in the only insurer that did not insure against you. In 2016, the Federal Reserve published a study on the racial wealth gap. The average white family held 10 times the wealth of the average black family. The study examined causes, redlining, GI Bill exclusion, predatory lending, and concluded what economists already knew. The gap was not built by personal failure, it was built by policy. What the study did not measure was what black families built anyway. The black middle class that existed before 1968 was constructed almost entirely without access to the financial system that served white America. They did it with rotating savings clubs and black-owned banks. They did it with cash purchases and family land. They did it with skills no school existed to teach. The skills worked. The system fought them. The skills still worked. Number 15. The layaway discipline. A mother in 1961, Pittsburgh put 50 cents a week on layaway at a black-owned dress shop for 14 weeks. The Easter dress cost $7. By the Saturday before Easter, it was paid for. Layaway was the credit system for people the credit system would not serve. No interest, no credit check, no bill in the mail. Across 4 years, she purchased over $200 in goods and paid 0 interest. Layaway was patience converted into purchasing power. Number 14. The funeral that doubled as a reunion. A grandmother died in 1958, Mississippi. 40 relatives came home from Chicago, Detroit, and Los Angeles. After the burial, the family gathered in her kitchen and divided her assets, the land, the house, the silver, the quilts, the savings. No lawyer, no probate, no estate tax. The agreement was written by hand and signed by all 40. Probate courts, in white-controlled counties, routinely lost paperwork, charged inflated fees, and ruled against black heirs. The kitchen was the alternative. The land in question is still owned today by the descendants who farmed it. The funeral was the will. The kitchen was the courtroom. Number 13. Teaching the children to count change. A boy of 7 in 1949 Atlanta was taught to count change before he could read. His mother handed him a quarter at the corner store and expected him to come back with the right groceries and the right coins. By 12, he could budget a week of groceries on $3. He knew which clerks shortchanged black customers. Financial literacy in black households was taught at 5 at the kitchen table, with real coins, because the schools would not teach it. The lesson was the money. The money was the lesson. Number 12. The bus pass math. A factory worker in 1956 Philadelphia calculated whether the bus pass was cheaper than walking. He calculated everything. Black workers in 1956 spent 18% of income on transportation, double their white counterparts, due to housing segregation pushing them farther from jobs. He walked 4 miles each way in good weather. The annual savings ran $84, enough for 2 months of rent. He resold his work boots at the black-owned cobbler for $1.50 instead of buying new at $11. He was not cheap. He was accounting for a city designed against him. Number 11. The hair done-at-home economy. A woman in Cleveland in 1957 did not pay $3 at the salon. She paid 50 cents for a relaxer at the drugstore, and she did her own hair at the kitchen table on Saturday morning. Across a year, she saved $130. That was a month's rent in a Cleveland tenement. The technique was passed at every kitchen table in every black neighborhood. A daughter sat between her mother's knees and learned how it was done. 20 years later, she taught her own daughter. The skill was the savings. The savings paid the rent. Number 10. The two-family mortgage. A man in 1962 Brooklyn could not get approved for a $14,000 mortgage alone, so he and his brother bought together. 2 incomes, 2 signatures, 1 mortgage. By 1975, the house was paid off. They sold it in 1981 for $48,000 and split the proceeds. The 2-family mortgage was the workaround for income discrimination. The bank could deny 1 black applicant. It struggled to deny 2 with combined income exceeding the threshold by 40%. The brother was the bank. The bank had no idea. Number 9, the HBCU pipeline. A daughter in 1959, Memphis was accepted to Tennessee State. Tuition was $340 a year. Her father, a janitor at the Peabody Hotel, had saved $5 a week since the day she was born. She graduated in 1963 with 0 debt. She began sending $40 a month home. By 1970, her brother was at Fisk on the same pipeline. Tuition at an HBCU was roughly 1/5 that of a flagship state university. The education was rigorous. The graduates pulled their families into the professional class. That amount was not a sacrifice. It was an investment with a 60-year return. Number 8, the rent party. A widow in 1954, Harlem could not make rent in March. She threw a rent party the Saturday before the 1st. Neighbors paid 50 cents at the door for fried fish, potato salad, and music until 2 in the morning. She made $40 that night. Rent was paid on Monday. Sociologists at Columbia in the 1940s estimated rent parties covered as much as 15% of all rental arrears in central Harlem. The party was not desperation. It was community insurance with a soundtrack. Number 7, the tool co-op. A man in 1958 Oakland did not own a circular saw. He shared one with 4 other men on his block. One had the saw, one the drill, one the pipe wrench, one the ladder, one the level. 5 households, 1 set of tools, a 75% reduction in capital outlay across a decade. When one man re-roofed his house, the other 4 came to help. The block functioned as a hardware store, a building supply, and a labor pool. The arrangement built 4 houses' worth of equity at the cost of 1 set of tools. Number 6, the pressed suit standard. A father in St. Louis in 1955 owned 2 suits, custom-fitted by a black tailor on Franklin Avenue for $38 each. They were pressed every Sunday and hung on cedar hangers. He wore them for 15 years. 2 well-made suits, properly maintained, outlasted 8 cheap suits and presented better at every funeral, wedding, and job interview. A pressed suit bought him respect at the bank counter, the doctor's office, and the courthouse, where being dismissed as poor cost more than any suit ever could. He bought the suit once. The respect it bought compounded for 15 years. Number 5, the black newspaper subscription. A Chicago Defender subscription in 1952 cost $7.50 a year. A subscriber in Memphis read about a Gary, Indiana teaching job paying $300 more than his current position. He applied. He got it. The job change netted him $4,200 in additional wages over 14 years. The Defender effectively functioned as the placement office for the Great Migration, directing migration patterns from the South to the industrial North. The smallest line item in the household budget, the highest returning. Number 4, the cash funeral plan. A grandfather in 1949 Birmingham paid Smith & Gaston Funeral Home $5 a month for 20 years. By the time he died in 1969, his funeral was paid in full. His widow buried him without taking a single dollar from the household. The mortgage continued. Her independence continued. The prepaid funeral was the most valuable thing her husband ever bought her, the gift of not having to make any financial decision in the worst week of her life. The $5 a month was love. The receipt was the proof. Number 3, the property tax discipline. A black family in 1957, rural Georgia, paid their property tax 6 months early every year. They paid in person, and they demanded a receipt that was kept and stored in a locked tin. Tax offices in southern counties tried to misplace black landowners' payments. Between 1920 and 1970, black families lost an estimated 13 million acres through tax sales, fraudulent foreclosures, and partition sales. The family in question held their 80 acres through 3 generations because every January 2nd, the patriarch walked to the courthouse and paid the year in full. The receipt in the dresser drawer was the deed's bodyguard. Number 2, the skill that could not be fired. A welder in 1961 in Gary, Indiana, could weld better than any man in his plant. His welds were tested at twice the required pressure and never failed. When layoffs came in 1962, he kept his job, while white workers with less skill lost theirs. Black workers in the industrial Midwest learned early that being adequate was not enough. A merely competent black worker was always more vulnerable than a merely competent white one. A clearly superior black worker was harder to fire and harder to underpay. The skill was the union. The skill was the insurance. The skill was the negotiation. Number 1, paying yourself first on Friday. The simplest skill on this list. The most powerful. The most completely abandoned. A Pullman porter in Chicago in 1947 named Cleophus cashed his check every Friday, before rent, before groceries, before household money. He took $4 off the top, 11% of his wages, and put it in a passbook savings account. Every week for 46 years. He did not save what was left. He saved first and lived on what remained. The order was everything. Anything saved last was anything that was never saved. Anything saved first was money that had already left the household before any decision was made about how to spend it. Across 46 years, that $4 a week became 3 houses, 2 college tuitions, and a $14,000 cushion his widow lived on for the rest of her life. He used no advisor, no planner. He used a passbook, a discipline, and a refusal to spend $1 before he had paid himself. A family today that pays itself first on Friday has the single most powerful wealth-building tool any working person has ever possessed. Not a stock tip, not a side hustle, not an app. A passbook, a Friday, $1 off the top. The Pullman porter paid himself first for 46 years and built generational wealth on a porter's wages. He was not lucky. He was not exceptional. He was disciplined. He paid himself before America had a chance to charge him for being black. These 30 skills were not poverty habits. They were the distilled financial intelligence of a people who built wealth in a country that had built itself on their unpaid labor. They banked where they were respected. They bought what they could pay for. They taught their children to count change before they could read. They built churches that owned themselves and insurance companies that insured them when no one else would. We let those skills fade. The convenience that replaced them has not been kind. The passbook is still available. Friday still comes every week. The $1 off the top still works exactly the way it did in 1947. Only the habit has been forgotten.